In this episode of Talking Clock, we sit down with Nop, who has probably owned more Octo Finissimos than anyone else in Singapore. We do a deep dive into the Bvlgari Octo Finissimo and discuss why it might be the best value sports watch out there. If you missed it, check out the previous episode where we talk about how AP is failing its collectors. Before we start, please like this video. The support makes a big difference. Enjoy. So I think a big brand that, personally, as well as I think for a lot of people when they look at your page now, is the Octo Finissimo and or Bvlgari and the Octo Finissimo. And for I think people who aren't so familiar, I feel like you are one of the very early adopters, very really pushing, saying that it's like good value and it's really an amazing watch, both technically and design wise. So yeah, can you just walk me through, what was the first Octo you bought and how has the journey been since then? Because I think you've gone right into the deep end of things as far as your pieces go.
I think typically if I like a brand, I usually try to go quite deep and go for the deep cuts. I try to explore everything. The first time I really noticed the Octo Finissimo, or at least the Finissimo, was the first original titanium Finissimo that came out in 2017, I think. And that kind of blew my mind because I never really thought of Bvlgari as a brand, like a watch brand.
Right.
Before that, I just thought, just make watches, but they're a jewelry house and whatever. But the Finissimo changed my mindset and my perception of them because I think the ultra thin profile, the in-house movement, the micro rotor, just the overall balance and aesthetics of the watch itself. It just looked very well thought, well designed. And I like masculine watches, like these very nice angular designs. Although I'm kind of evolving now, but back then I really liked all the sharp lines, all the angular lines, the oak and whatever. So Octo was kind of like a natural extension of that. And I really liked that first cut, and after that they came out with the chronograph, the GMT, which is also another full record again. So they're really kind of going that unique selling point, that angle of ultra thin complications, and I think that's a really clear message to the market. Like, okay, this is what we're trying to do. This is how we're trying to separate ourselves from the rest of the other brands. And I think they've communicated it well. And they've done it at a price point that I think, it's very disruptive. We're talking about like a time-only watch that's under $20,000 with the in-house movement, decent water resistance, integrated bracelet. I would say decent finishing. I wouldn't say the best, but decent.
For the price.
For the price, exactly. Yeah. It's very affordable. You compare that to, other brands, it's just priced well. And I think it's, I would say, recession proof in a way, because the pricing doesn't, some of these brands, they up the price like crazy during the COVID period. You think that price is that worth it now in this market? That's what I'm trying to say, like recession
proof. The value for money.
Exactly. Like, people don't have the money to spend to buy, spend $70,000 on a steel sports watch or $100,000 anymore, right? $20,000, whether it's a good market or bad market, you still kind of could afford it if you felt it was the right time to buy a watch. You know what I mean? So yeah, I went through the whole catalog, skeletons, chronograph. I was lucky enough to find a perpetual calendar in platinum at a good price. I always try to find good deals on stuff. I don't really see the point in, paying above and beyond for something, even if it's amazing, because I think if you can get a good deal, then why not, right? That's it's just common sense. Like, I recently picked up, I think end of last year, the Skeleton 2B monobusher, which is amazing. I think just the amount of complications that are in the watch and put into a compact profile, I think it's a testament to them pushing the envelope every year. And it almost sets a condition, like, you're expecting the brand to keep topping themselves year on year. I think it's not sustainable, obviously, because I think after some point in time, you need to start to change it up a little bit, which I
Right.
think they are with the Roma, like the new Octo Roma. They're trying to go for the smaller size because I think a lot of feedback was, some customers couldn't really wear the Octo Finissimo.
Yeah, it's quite flat.
It's flat,
big,
yeah, exactly. So some people may not be able to pull it off. So the Roma now is like I think 45 lug to lug, 45 mm. So it's definitely shorter and it can fit a lot more wrists, even though it's not that thick. Not that thin. But yeah, they've got a lot of cool things that are coming out, from what I understand. But yeah, so it's just a brand that seems to be a lot more humble, a lot more attentive to the customers, and not arrogant. Yeah, I really like what they're doing. I speak with Fabrizio on Instagram from time to time, like message him to say nice things.
And for people who don't know, he's the designer.
Yeah, Fabrizio. I'm not gonna butcher his name. So, but he's basically the creative director for Bvlgari watches. So he's a really nice guy. He's really passionate about what he does, and you can tell when you speak to him. And it just makes the affinity with the brand even more for me. It just makes me happy that I'm supporting this brand and showcasing it to other people, other watch collectors, other people who are into watches, or watch geeks. Why they should be looking at something other than the usual suspects. Yeah.
So having owned and worn, so many different complications or so many variations of the Octo, as well as a lot of different complications, is there anything about the collection as a whole, or even with specific watches that, let's say that you can fix one or two things, Fabrizio gives you the option to say like change one or two things. Is there anything generally that you feel that you think needs to be improved, or, if you could, you would change it?
I think for some people, they preferred it maybe to be a little less wide, profile-wise, lug to lug. I think having options to make it slightly smaller, maybe like 38 or something like that, or 39, with a shorter lug to lug, would be ideal for a lot of people. For me, I'm fine because of the way I wear the watch. I wear it higher up the wrist, so it looks okay to me. But some people prefer it lower down, so it can look a little bit oversized in a way, or a little bit flat. But I mean, that could be one, I would say, if I really wanted to nitpick. I think, small things like, finishing probably, but then again, like we mentioned, it's for the price point. I think it's hard to do both. But I think that the level of finishing has improved over time. Like, I've owned the earlier models of the Finissimo, and I compare that to the later ones. The base finishing is actually better. It's actually improved.
You're talking about movement finishing?
Yeah, movement finishing.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the case finishing, it depends if it's sandblasted or sand brush. I think the sand brush is amazing already, so I don't have any qualms with that. It's just really about, I think, movement finishing has always been the gripe from a lot of people, that it's kind of basic. But then again, you have to think the price point, right? Like, if you compare to an AP that's, Steel Sports is $40,000, compare that to a Finissimo, which is half the price of that, or less than half. Obviously, you're gonna trade off something. Right.
AP finishing isn't.
Yeah, it's better, but it's not wow, right? It's not like
for the price you're paying. It's definitely
exactly. I mean, we all know that. So it's just, I think, comparing. I think if I had to sort of nitpick ever so slightly, I think those are the small things. But generally, I think they've done a lot of good stuff. Like even the integrated bracelet with the recess on the buckle. So these little things that I think jewelry brands do a lot better than watch brands, because they think about ergonomics, they think about wearability, they think about comfort, which to me is a big deal. Like for me, wearability is key. Like I can like a watch, it can look great on the table, but when you put it on your wrist and it wears like it's wearing you, then it's not a watch that you'd be picking it up to go out,
Then to date, I think, they've done so many ultra thin complications that are world records, so many dial variations, a lot of special editions. For someone who is looking to get an Octo today, what are the pieces, whether it's to buy a gray or buy a brand new, what are the sort of pieces or editions that you think are either underrated or that you think people should, really look out for, or complications?
I think, with every brand, you're trying to dip your toe in at the beginning to really see whether it's the right watch for you. I think for anyone who's kind of on the fence and they're trying to figure it out for themselves, very start with the Octo Finissimo S, either black dial, blue dial, depending which one you like. There's slate gray right now. There's a bunch of them probably you could get on the gray market fairly easily, which is not a knock on them. I think it's if you remember, AP used to be selling way below retail back when I started. So it's just, right now you have this window where the watches are fairly easy to come by. Use that as an opportunity to discover whether it's the right watch for you, right? And then, because it could change, we don't know, right? But my point is, that would be a good first step. Underrated, yeah, a lot of the high-end complications are fairly affordable in the secondary market. I would say probably at a good discount off retail, and they represent a lot of value from a horological perspective. You think about the perpetual calendar, 5.8 millimeters thick, world's thinnest perpetual calendar, beat AP 1 year after they came out with the RD2. And it's just a really wearable watch. I think we had this conversation before. When you see me wear the watch, it almost feels like it's like second skin.
Right.
And I often forget I'm wearing the watch. Like, that's how a watch is well made, well designed. Wearability is key. Even the skeleton, for example, the 8 days power reserve skeleton that they introduced last year, and now they have a titanium version that just came out. It represents great value for a watch that's under $40,000 thing, for a titanium skeleton with 8 days power reserve.
And full bracelet.
And I think it's 5.6 millimeters thick. So you've got all these crazy unique selling points, and it's under $40,000. So do you want to get a run-of-the-mill oak, or do you want to get skeleton titanium ultra thin watch with high horology behind it? You make the decision, right? If you're not brand whore, I think the answer is rhetorical.
Yeah. Then I think I'll just touch on one last thing to end the topic. So for me, when I first started following you, I think the iconic watch was the 15407. I think, just seeing all your photos, I think you're probably one of the first people who made me aware of the watch in the first place. So you've owned a few skeletons from the Octo line. How would you say that they stack up against something like a 15407?
I think, we always have to put price into context, because I think watches are a very expensive hobby. If everyone could afford everything, then obviously they'll go for the best of everything, right?
Right.
But we all know, the price points are very, very different. 5407, we talk about, today's market price is probably around $150,000 Sing in the gray market.
That's for brand new?
For use, probably brand new is probably like 180 maybe, I'm not sure.
Oh wow, okay.
It could be coming down. Like I said, it's fairly fluid right now, but retail's 108. The Octo Finissimo in titanium is 37.
Yep.
All right, so
the 8 days.
The 8 days, yeah, skeleton.
Oh, that's very cheap.
So it's less. It's about a third of the price. In terms of finishing wise, obviously, I think the 15407 wins. Aesthetics wise, I would say obviously the double balance is the main draw. The rest of the watch, the bridges and everything are kind of random. I think a lot of people say it's a bit of a hot mess, but no one really cares because they're really looking at that double balance, right?
Yes.
They're just like, oh wow, that looks cool.
Shiny.
Ooh, look at that thing like jiggling around, right? But it's a very thick watch, right? It's like 10 point I think it's 10 mm around there. It's the same thickness as the 15400, but skeletonized. So it's definitely chunky on the wrist. Not the chunkiest. It's just borderline, and actually fairly wearable, much more than the 15305 in terms of wearability due to the flare, the lug flare.
Yep.
But aesthetically wise, it's of course a beautiful watch. Like probably aesthetics wise, probably the nicest skeleton out there.
Or the most iconic, I think, for sure.
Yeah, probably the most instantly recognizable. Right.
Yeah.
But in terms of price wise, is it? I mean, you think about the value versus aesthetics or what you're getting out of it. I think that's the real thing.
In the next episode, we'll talk in depth about the Tonda PF from Parmigiani with Nop. Do like and subscribe so you don't miss it. Thank you for watching.